On this beautiful spring morning, Shane, Chester and I would love to take you on a gentle wander from the peaceful village of Spetisbury towards its neighbour, Charlton Marshall. Our journey follows the North Dorset Railway, a path that once echoed with whistles and wheels of passing steam trains. Today, those sounds have been replaced by birdsong, rustling leaves and the occasional happy bark. Together, we'll walk through ancient landscapes, beside the well-travelled River Stour, past fields that have been worked for generations, and churches that have watched over Dorset for centuries. So settle comfortably, take a slow, deep breath, and join us for a little adventure. Assuming Chester remembers he has 4 perfectly good legs. One thing we couldn't help noticing was just how little space there is for pedestrians beside the Spetisbury's busy road. It's something worth bearing in mind if you ever decide to visit yourself. Chester soon decided that walking wasn't such a dreadful idea after all. A narrow path slipped gently away from the country lane, leading us onto the old railway line. The trailway soon wrapped us in a different world altogether. The sounds of passing traffic faded into birdsong, and Dorset seemed to slow its pace. Well, apart from the stinging nettles, which were rather enthusiastic about welcoming us. Following Chester through the spring growth, we suddenly found the landscape opening before us. Ahead stood Spetisbury Rings. A lonely trig point marked the hilltop. These sturdy concrete pillars were placed across Britain between the 1930s and 1960s by Ordnance Survey surveyors, allowing them to map the country with astonishing accuracy, using nothing more than careful measurements between distant hilltops. It seemed the perfect place to pause for breakfast. As we looked across the sweeping Stour Valley, it was impossible not to wonder how many people had stood here before us. Over 2,000 years ago, this hilltop was already important. Long before villages, roads and railways, an Iron Age community built a great circle fort here, surrounding themselves with banks and ditches for protection. The Rings watched over the valley long before Dorset had its name. Then came an extraordinary discovery. When the railway was being built in the 1850s, workers discovered 2 mass graves containing around 90 people. Some had clearly died violently. One skeleton still had an iron spearhead embedded in the skull. No one knows exactly what happened here. Perhaps a forgotten battle, or maybe something else entirely. The hill has kept its secrets for centuries. Leaving the Rings behind, we continued until another piece of Dorset's history slowly emerged. The remains of Spetisbury Station. Only fragments remain today. An old platform, a familiar station sign, gentle reminders that this peaceful path was once full of movement. the station first opened in 1860, becoming part of the famous Somerset and Dorset Railway. For more than a century, trains carried commuters, farmers, holidaymakers and goods between Dorset, Somerset and beyond. Like so many rural railways, it eventually fell silent, closing during the 1960s. Nature, however, has a wonderful habit of reclaiming what people leave behind. For many years, the station disappeared beneath trees and tangled undergrowth, until a group of local volunteers uncovered it once more. Thanks to their dedication, visitors today can still stand where passengers once waited and imagine the clouds of steam rolling across the valley. As we continue towards Charlton Marshall, the railway still left few clues for those willing to notice them. White stones line the edge of the old track bed. Looking more closely, we realised many were pieces of local chalk, likely used during the railway's construction over 160 years ago. Even when the trains have gone, the landscape remembers. Thankfully, Chester was on hand to remind us that not every journey needs rushing. Sometimes the nicest thing to do is simply sit for a while. Before long, we arrived in Charlton Marshall. Like Spetisbury, the village stretches beside the main road, although we were rather grateful to find a proper pavement waiting for us this time. A short walk brought us to St Mary's Church. Resting beside the River Stour, this beautiful Grade 1 listed church is something of a hidden treasure. Although much of what we see today dates from the early 18th century, its tower reaches back to the late 14th century, connecting generations separated by hundreds of years. Behind the church, we discovered a peaceful little garden leading down towards the River Stour. Chester immediately decided that a paddle was far more important than history. Watching him splash happily in the shallows, while daisies nodded gently in the breeze. It was hard to imagine a more peaceful corner of Dorset. A little further on, we found a bench overlooking a slow-moving part of the River Stour. Cottages draped in cascading wisteria stood by the water. Soft white seeds floated through the air like tiny feathers. Bees hummed lazily among the flowers. It felt like one of those moments that asks nothing of you except to simply be still. So we unpacked our lunch and enjoyed the view. Originally, we planned to turn back. Chester, however, had other ideas. Somehow, after convincing us earlier that walking was simply impossible, he suddenly discovered a remarkable burst of energy and decided Blandford Forum sounded like an excellent destination after all. As we continued north, the old railway calmly accompanied us. Another platform appeared through the trees. Another reminder that this peaceful green corridor was once part of one of Britain's most famous country railways. Affectionately nicknamed both the Slow and Dirty and the Slow and Doubtful by those who travelled it, the Somerset and Dorset Railway carried passengers, freight and holidaymakers for generations before closing in 1966 during the beaching cuts. The trains may have disappeared, but speed certainly hadn't. Moments later, Chester met another border terrier. What followed can only be described as terrier chaos. After such an energetic encounter, Chester finally accepted that perhaps he had overestimated his reserves. The rest of the journey was enjoyed from the comfort of his sling, where he seemed perfectly content to watch the Dorset countryside drift gently by. Eventually, we reached a junction signalling the end of the line. One path invited us onwards towards more fields. The other pointed towards Blandford Forum. For today, we decided our little adventure had reached its natural ending and turned gently back towards Spetisbury. Before long, Chester was asleep, listening to birdsong above us, with only the faintest murmur of distant traffic carried on the breeze. We made our way back to the car. There is something wonderfully restorative about places like this. No grand attractions, no crowds, just rivers, old railway lines, ancient hills, birdsongs, and time to notice them. We hope you've enjoyed wandering through this peaceful corner of Dorset with us. Until next time, happy wandering.